What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Passive Tree Podcast, a podcast dedicated talking about life, Path of Exile 2, and everything in between. Tonight on episode 39, I'm joined by a fellow content creator and game dev. More on that later. He's none other than Lighty. Welcome on, and how are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on this very professionally run podcast. I look forward to doing my utmost to derail your framework and situation.
Challenge accepted. Bring on the derailment, man.
No, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to talking about anything you want. Path of Exile 3, PoE Mobile, whatever, I'm on board.
It's funny that you bring up PoE Mobile. So I'm working on like a long video right now. It's kind of like a retrospective of the last year of Path of Exile 2's like early access. And so I'm doing my research because I feel like a lot of people, especially people who are new to the series or new to Path of Exile in general, aren't really aware of like how it started or how it became. And from my research, I'm going back, I'm watching all the old ExileCon keynote like presentations and whatnot. And there actually was, and I didn't know about this, a PoE mobile game pitched right after PoE 2 got announced in 2019. That's wild.
Yeah, it's it technically hasn't been canned yet. So it should still be in development, although I'm sure it's massively waylaid, as is most of their projects and their timelines. But yeah, it was, and it's just to clarify, PoE Mobile is not a direct port of either the current iteration of PoE 1 or 2, but a entirely genuine new experience. But a toned down version of it. So it's not like they're just trying to port it to mobile. They were just trying to make a third game while doing everything else.
Yeah, and it was funny. So in the 2019 presentation, Chris Wilson even said, "Oh, if we had like pitched this a year earlier, we would have gotten some serious crap or whatever, because this was like a post Diablo Immortal presentation, like very shortly after that." Yeah, just a fun fact. And I wonder if we're gonna see any update on the PoE mobile game like in ExileCon this year. Could be seeing a release date on that.
Could be. I highly doubt it'll be released in any form that's acceptable anytime soon.
Yeah,
to me, it's like the bottom of the barrel of all the things that are already at the bottom of the barrel. But
like from the presentation, it was like playable. Like people played this version of Path of Exile like at ExileCon like 6 years ago. So I don't know.
It was quite a debacle when they showcased it, because I found out that they used the wrong table when showcasing the demo. So the FPS was like at 2. So it wasn't actually that the game was running like shit. It was that they just didn't do the technical side of the presentation properly. So for 20 minutes they just sat in that couch struggling through the lowest FPS demo, known to man. And it's like, this was just not, it definitely was not the appropriate representation of what they were trying to showcase. And we've never gotten really a much better one since. So I'm not sure what iteration we're ever going to see of that, but there's definitely a market for it without question, right? Just a matter of like, is it a priority? Probably not remotely. Yeah, with everything that's happening. So
it was a bold decision to even do that after like the outcry and like the wildfire that happened from Diablo Immortal. Like it was a bold decision. Yeah.
You could argue in a few directions. So Diablo Immortal has, just from a business perspective, keep in mind that game has made, in the first year of its inception, made $500 million.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. Diablo 4 is at 1.5 billion to date. So Diablo Immortal is incredibly financially successful, even though it's like the most, shill-pilled fucking product ever made, probably. Minor side note, I was just looking at UIs for our game that we're making, and the entirety of Diablo Immortal does not pause the game when you're in any of the menus, except when you're in the real money store menu. That's when it pauses the game. So it's the only one that has quality of life is when you're to be spending money.
That's a very funny factoid about that game. No, the time only matters when you're in the cash up. Everything else stops.
Break out a credit card. Yeah. And it's like, it's just a strange port. I was, again, that's definitely in line with the history of Blizzard. You look at their launcher right now. There's 5 different variations of Diablo that are technically playable, which is like insane that that's even a thing. So they're doing metrically, they're doing something right. Unfortunately, even though it doesn't translate to like the more veteran player base, as far as like these games don't get remotely any respect, as in my opinion they probably shouldn't these days, outside of like D2 and whatever that's become. But like, yeah, it's they keep making money, people keep buying it, so they're gonna keep doing it because it's working technically.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy the purchasing power that an IP has, especially when the IP was responsible for people like a generation of gamers,
Yeah, a
myself included.
progenitor,
Yeah,
without question. Yeah.
providing that generation of gamers with like some of the most unforgettable moments in gaming history, right? Like, we
Mhm.
talk about this all the time on my stream. As far as Blizzard goes, I don't know if there was a company that I can think of that was as impactful for me, like, and as impactful in terms of like they just felt like they never missed, right? Like up, like for
Oh,
me,
for the first few years, no. I mean,
yeah,
it's basically like the Warcraft to WoW to StarCraft. It was literally banger after banger after. Even Overwatch 1, which is now the only Overwatch yet again.
yeah,
You've come back to one. Um, it was that first 10 to 15 years was this like triple S. It was like, to your point, it was a company that you could have faith in, which is an insane thing to say to the modern Blizzard. I would probably put it most akin to something like a modern day FromSoft or a Larian Studios, where it's like any game that these companies put out, like it would not be crazy to just snap by it, and you're going to get an extremely high quality product. And that used to be like during your childhood or my childhood, like that was Blizzard for a huge chunk of time.
yeah, and they're very aware of the impact that those games have had. Like, it felt like to me when I was a kid that anytime a Blizzard game came out, there was no skepticism at a certain point. It was always like, how are they doing this? Like, how are they
Yep.
continually leveling up every single game they make? Like,
Mhm.
going from Diablo 1 to Diablo 2 was just insane. Even like Warcraft 3 to the Frozen Throne to World of Warcraft was
Yep.
insane. Like everything. So yeah,
They didn't.
they of course are harnessing that. And I think that like to a certain point, and I feel ashamed, but I will be honest and say that like any Diablo game that comes out, I will probably pay for it and play it.
Mhm.
Despite like being disappointed by Diablo 4 and not really enjoying that title. Yeah, like the weight of how much power and like enjoyment I've gotten from Diablo 2 will carry out throughout my whole life,
For
probably.
sure.
Yeah.
It's not that Diablo 4 is a bad game. I wouldn't say that because there's a lot of things that it does excel in. They're just typically not levers that I give a shit about, to be honest. Again, Diablo 4 from a casual perspective, it does a lot of things right. Its approachability is quite well. The way that's been ported to console and it's cross play, like that sort of stuff is really good. Even things like I was discussing menus, but like the accessibility for various like handicaps and how it tackles that is better than most any other game to a degree. But it's for somebody like me who has like 30,000 hours in PoE. I can't. It's just not a game I could remotely sink my teeth into. So it just doesn't fit my like that. I've left it behind because it doesn't fit that demographic for me. But like Diablo 3, Diablo 4, you're playing with like the boys for a weekend. It's still a great time. It's just that's the extent of like you're done after that.
For sure. It's like what so Darth Microch's action was on here a few episodes ago, and he had this great point where he said that the end game of all ARPGs is Path of Exile. And I think he hit the nail on the head with that because once you play enough ARPGs, you end up you're going to inevitably play Path of Exile, and it will offer you the most bang for your buck in terms of like
Yeah.
the more time I sink into this, the more I'm going to get out of it. And there's a lot of time that you can sink into it. And then it's hard to go from being in the end game back to the campaign again. That's kind of how I would feel
Yeah.
playing D4, right? Where it kind of feels like, this is great. I played through it with my gal and she loved the story. We had a great time playing it for a weekend. It was fine, but you're always kind of it leaves a lot to be desired, especially
It's a
when you're
big
used
amount
to.
of like whiplash for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking about Path of Exile,
Mhm.
it's funny. So I was actually thinking as I was writing these questions, I've had the chance to talk to Lighty a ton. over the last like few months. I've actually
Yeah.
never asked you what you thought about Path of Exile 2. And I know you're such a big advocate for Path of Exile 1. So just like generally speaking, man, what are your thoughts about the game?
So with my answer to this question comes a lot of weight because in a couple directions, right? I'm simply too close to this to give a like an unbiased opinion remotely.
Mhm.
It's one of those things where it's like if you were coming from the outside, nothing I'm gonna say means anything, and it shouldn't resonate with you remotely. So just keep that in mind. In general, Path of Exile 2 to me was an inevitability with how they went about it. I mean, if you're going to zoom out, like I think the overarching decision was an incorrect one to schism the games at all. But it's already happened. There's no point of crying over spilt milk. So the creation of PoE 2, I don't agree with. How PoE 2 has been transitioning from patch to patch to patch, in my opinion, maybe aside from patch point 2, has been better each time. So, like the overall history and politics of it, do I think PoE 2 was a good idea to make? Remotely, no. Not even close. I think it was the wrong decision. However, it's happened, so there's no point in complaining about that part of it. So let's talk about the actual game itself.
Okay,
I
before we
played
get into the
everything.
game, I
Yeah,
want to follow up on this because I think this is very
correct.
interesting. So
I can
you're saying,
answer it, yes.
yeah, so you're saying you don't agree with it being made. Can you identify if it's the entire project or is it more specifically
Sure.
the deviant like how it deviated from being initially part of PoE 1 and then became a separate title? Like where does your sort of disagreement
I
lie
could
there?
literally just quote Chris Wilson on this. And the quote is, "For years we wanted to make a sequel to Path of Exile. The problem with that is sequels split a community between two products and also
Yeah.
dip in quality. It's also hard for sequel to compete with the amount of content and features that the original game has." And to quote Chris again, they've spent 6 years making expansions. So imagine if we released PoE 2 and it was just a bare campaign with none of the extra content. This would be a sad shell of an action ARPG. That's the
It's
Chris quote.
basically verbatim, and it's so crazy that you just said that because I just literally took that clip from ExileCon
Mhm.
2019, and it's
Yep.
in my video that I'm working on right now. So you're hitting
Yep.
the nail on the head. Sorry, please
Yeah.
continue.
So I wrote a like 20-page article about this topic pretty much a couple of years ago and went back 7 years and then up to what was the point 3 launch as like a whole journalistic thing because this is something I was fascinated about. And there's a lot of factors that play into it, from the selling of a large portion of the game to Tencent initially, then the following 87% sale, then the changing of the board, then the kind of whisking away of Chris Wilson as game director very silently, which was strange. Like there was a lot
Hmm.
of sort of behind the scenes shenanigans that I think lead into what this was, how PoE was initially proposed as the 4.0, the revision of Melee, all these sort of things. So like basically, I think there's very little from the PoE point 1 launch that was better than PoE regular PoE, like PoE 1. So the PoE like point 2 launch was like a sad shell of a game, in my opinion. So it's just there was very little systems I felt were most of them felt regressive in their design. You could mimic this to things like the well, where when Jonathan says we wanted to re-add the well because it's fun. And to me, it's like you're so out of touch with reality here if you think this is like an
Sir
engaging
Gog just woke up
mechanic.
super angry, just like
Yeah.
hearing the idea
So
of the well be brought up.
exactly. But there's certain things that PoE 2 has that are good ideas. Maybe like it's hard to say objectively good idea, but at least the intention behind the direction is clear. So an example of that is having spirit versus ore reservation. That way you're splitting the dynamic of where your mana is allocated and it frees up ways you can express skills. I understand that. Having the amendment to the gem system be a way of alleviating the fusing and jeweler problem, if you want to call it that. That's more of like maybe a side grade, but I understand the intention behind that. My point initially with the creation of the second game is that I would rather have spent the 5 years of time and money just working on the first game, and there's nobody can convince me that PoE would have been better as a whole if they just spent 5 years of 10, 20, 30, 40 million dollars on just improving PoE 1, then that was better to be PoE 2. Because right now, for me, still, if PoE 1 just had the graphics and better engine that PoE 2 had with its amendments, I think that would be that's like, to me, that's the main thing it has. But again, since then, from 1.1 to 0.2-ish to 3 to 4, the game has gotten, for me, substantially better. And these are all larger steps in the right direction. It's still, to me, like 3 years out from what would be even close to the experience, because, again, we're coming back to just how much content does PoE 1 have that the other game doesn't. It's going to be like a Diablo 4 thing for me, where I get to endgame and it's like, well, there's just not a whole lot going on compared to what I could do over here that I know is just a better endgame product. So
yeah,
it depends on your foot stock, but yeah.
No, I hear you, man. And it's funny, like doing a lot of my research on this new video, it's kind of it's not kind of, it is fascinating that the change, the turn of events and how they sort of reformatted what the initial plan for PoE 2 was in 2019 into, this apparently the project just got too big and it had to be its own separate game. We don't know. Maybe you do know more about this, but I don't know if there was stuff that was going on behind the scenes that led to the demand or like the request to make a second product versus having a first product. But it essentially was like, going to be exactly the opposite of what Chris Wilson wanted for PoE 2, like in 2019. And then, the whole like kind of phasing out of himself sort of like silently was really weird. Even from somebody who hasn't had a lot of hands-on time with PoE 1. Like I know that he is obviously a beloved person in the community and part of that company. And so, that was strange. It seems like there might have been more like going on behind the scenes.
Undoubtedly. And we'll never know. We'll never know the truth. Like, I mean, I've met most of these people in person at a time, but you're never going to like know definitively what led to what specifically. And it, aside from the journalistic curiosity, it really doesn't matter because it's just, this is where we're at.
Of course.
But
I will say
it's strange though. Yeah.
It is strange. It is strange. And I know, I wish that we could just like, I don't know,
be a fly on the wall. Yeah.
I wish we could be a fly on the wall in like overhearing some sort of conversation that happened behind the scenes to figure out exactly what went down. But I will say, from somebody who is how I would describe the exact opposite of you as a player, because I'm somebody from a new generation of PoE gamers who started with PoE 2 first. I can only speak to my own experiences, right? And so
of course,
that essentially is that I could never get into PoE 1 because it felt like I was just so behind on everything that was happening, especially up to a certain point. And so there is sort of a merit to attracting new people to the franchise because of that. I think that is a very big thing for a lot of people. Like, so I think they were successful with regards to just getting people in the door.
The approachability of PoE 1 is horrendous. And they have made like zero effort over the past 10 years to make the game approachable from a new player experience, to like lubricate you getting more knowledge in the game. Nothing is in game. Like it's so mind-bogglingly dog shit that the glossary hasn't been ported. Things like the basic tutorials they're literally 7 years old. You can look in the in-game tutorial in PoE 1 and there's artifacted descriptions that are from Delirium that were never rectified. Like it's not even a matter of we've tried and we've failed. They never tried. They've never tried to get to make it easier for new players. They've never tried to bridge the gap of knowledge because that's the biggest thing. That's what makes it unapproachable. You look at all these systems and mechanics, like it's kind of a meme thing where you're like, oh, there's a guy who's never played PoE, he opens a skill tree, whoa, it's so big. But like, it's like there's a lot of illusion of choice in the game, but there's no way to navigate that because they give you none of the tools to do it. They just push that onto the community on the other websites, on the third-party tools, and say they'll figure it out. You'll try whatever, like it's just not our problem at the moment. And then it is their problem, but then they've now just kind of abandoned that problem for PoE 1, and then they've solved it with PoE 2 very easily and very backportably, but they just haven't. So to me, that's why, like, initially talking about the mission statements of the game being polar opposites, right, and what they're trying to accomplish. Well, that's also been compromised to the fact where the games are becoming more and more and more similar over time by not only virtue of just what the players want on whole, but also that it's the same people working on the game. So like their ideologies and their workflows are just bleeding together because there's not like two segregated teams. Absolutely. It's like the same people. So it's just a matter of time that when one of these games, and it's probably going to be PoE 1, I think unquestionably is just going to get the axe because it doesn't make any sense to be running both games, ad infinitum just cuz like.
Yeah. It seems a bit ludicrous because they are essentially the only company on Earth that have two industry-leading ARPG games coexisting side beside each other, competing
Mhm.
against each other. Like it seems a bit. It not doesn't seem.
Yeah,
It is. It is crazy a little
it's
bit.
strange because
Yeah.
also other companies have done similar transitions well, but they're just not Venn diagrams of player bases. So like you have things like WoW and Classic WoW, RuneScape and OSRS. Like it can exist in company. It has to be tackled carefully, and it's the path is plowed through nothing but 10 years of friction.
Yeah.
So we might be in that 10 years of friction, and then there's tons of opportunities to like back monetize and like have support for it. You know, you have things like which is goofy, but Classic WoW is like already up to like the Panda expansion, which is not remotely classic. Eventually, we're gonna reach some sort of parabolic black hole where classic WoW catches up to real time, and then I assume that the sky is gonna open up. But like, I could see that being a thing where we might just have what would be that in PoE. But the problem is they've tried to kind of do it with Ruthless, recapture the lightning in the bottle of what was PoE 1.0. And as someone who played that and has played Ruthless, they're not the same because you can't recapture the lack of information spread. You can't recapture the lack of community that was like driving together when there wasn't the third party tools, there wasn't the accessible information, there wasn't the plugins and the
Yeah.
overlays. Like it
The good
just,
old days. Yeah.
yeah, that's just a fruitless endeavor. So I'm not sure what the how to navigate into that one, but
I
they've
know.
got so much on their hands, and everything's getting about 70%. So
Yeah.
we'll see what gets through.
It's been fascinating sort of like getting to be involved in this community and to be involved with grinding your games in some capacity and just like understanding sort of the entire picture as much as possible. I think it's very interesting. It feels like with PoE 2, and I don't know if this is the case or not, but it kind of felt like they had to make a decision, and the decision was either redo a lot of the initial game, like the
Yeah.
initial, the campaign is, I think, it's safe to say it's atrocious in PoE 1. Like, there's no comparison to like PoE 2's campaign, and then having a fresh start, I think, allowed for them to really hone in like what's important to include in this game. In PoE 2, I think, because it feels like in PoE 1 right now, there's a lot of stuff that's just overlapping for no reason to the
So
point where
much
like,
bloat.
yeah,
Bloat out the ass.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
there's
I
tons
think
of bloat.
I really hope, and I don't know what's going to happen, lady. A lot of people say that PoE 2 is just going to be getting as bloated as give it a couple years, and PoE 2 will be
Sure.
just as bloated as PoE 1. I hope that they don't do that. I hope that if they've taken all of this time to redo everything and start from scratch, at least like learn how to streamline. And I think like,
Mhm.
I want to believe that they'll learn from that mistakes, especially.
Well, so historically, that's been something they've been very poor at doing, which is learning from mistakes, because they oftentimes make the same mistakes, and it has to do with a few different factors. Sometimes it's just the cadence of their workflow and with schedules they put upon themselves, which is a whole other conversation because it's a schedule that nobody requested, but they try to adhere to, miss, fail, like backlash. Then it's just like we're perpetually behind schedule in so many directions. So it could be a managerial issue, a scheduling issue, why things become up so strange and bloated because there's just a disconnect between mechanical components of the game. I think a big part of that is also like if they don't have unique identities to each mechanic, then other mechanics become lesser iterations of them. So an example of that is if the only place you can get omens in PoE 2 is Abyss, that will always have inherent value. Therefore, that mechanic is like solidified and codified as being one that can exist. If nothing specific and unique came from Expedition, aside from maybe a small subsection of uniques in game, it's just going to be a lesser version of a mechanic that does the same thing or offers more experience and loot. So they're going to have this constant comparison between mechanics. And again, like you're saying, the ball is in their court to slowly drip feed them in an appropriate way that retains the mechanical identity but doesn't cause bloat and overlap. But they're being pressured from all the players, the vast majority of them, the ones that made their game, PoE 1 players, to start introducing the other mechanics. And if they do it haphazardly, we're going to end up in the exact same position. I don't know how they're going to approach it, but so far it's been like okay. You know, you
I
would be
think
able
it's
to
been
speak to
good
more
so
experience.
far. I mean, I play SSF,
Yeah,
and so I'm very familiar with like the way the whole big picture is. Like,
for sure.
do I think that Expedition could use some more interesting rewards? Yes, but the fact that you enable or you gain access to recombination is enough for it to be okay. Like, it doesn't need to be as strong as Abyss is for crafting or Ritual is for crafting.
As long as it offers something that is unique to that mechanic that you can't get elsewhere. So, like, an example of how this became a massive problem in PoE 1 is you had mechanics like Heist, which, although it had a very large section of unique loot, it was the best place to get Legion splinters, Breach splinters, synthesis items, that sort of stuff. So a big part that Chris even spoke about back when he was there was we want to retain the identity of mechanics, to replace the items behind their mechanics. If you want to get a Breach thing, you do Breach. If you want to get a Ritual thing, you do Ritual. You can get like small amounts from other places, but the main identity should be solidified. With that, it's been basically, it was like 1 league of that being true, and then it immediately crumpled. And then it's, now there's just like, what's the best way to get ward items? Well, that would be Expedition. That's where ward items come from. Wrong. It's about sending boats. Like it which is sure like kind of attached to it, but like the same thing just goes, it's just so wackadoodle that the best way to get maybe a synthesis ring. That's redoing synthesis, right? Wrong. It's actually Ritual. Like, it's just, what's the point? So that's when you end up with this sort of bloat situation where we've got so many competing mechanics that don't have a clear and cut identity, and then you've got where they keep trimming things back, which is good.
Yeah.
But as is anything, it's like the PoE mantra: high scope, poor execution. Like, if you don't balance it right and don't do it right, it's just not going to hit. And then you've got a situation where you're in right now in PoE that we're leaving, which is the Breach thing, where 9 out of 10 people you speak to think this is a worse iteration than the previous, not only mechanically and joy-wise, which is hard to quantify, but the actual Breach mechanic, the Keeper mechanic, totally ruins 90% of the loot in the game.
Yeah.
So it's like, which again, you would ask yourself, well, wouldn't this be caught in 1 week of QA testing, 1 week of beta testing internally? Yeah. I mean,
it was meant to do that. It was totally meant to do that. Yeah.
It's just, there's a lot of those things where it's like, well, this is like, would have been caught with the loosest filter.
Yeah.
We would have told you this was going to happen. We're going to tell you right now, it's going to happen again. So,
and it's funny because the Genesis tree for me was like, oh, I can actually play SSF and PoE 1 now because I don't need to understand every single thing going on in order to
cut the first 3 weeks of your rare progress off.
Exactly.
Pretty much.
I got 6 links and I'm an Act 10. Like, this is great.
Yeah. Act 6. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
it is great for the first week. And then you realize, wait a second. Yeah. Why am I showing any rares after day 2? Oh, there's no point. Got it. This is a problem. Like,
for sure. It completely undermined the entire like itemization process, essentially. And so, basically what I wanted to say about PoE 2 specifically is that it's kind of at this threshold right now where every piece of the puzzle is providing a very substantial, like a very substantial thing towards itemization, towards progress, towards basically progression. And they have to be so careful with what they add in next. But God, dude, like even with 0.3 to 0.2, as you mentioned, 0.2, even from an update standpoint, we didn't have crafting, dude. Like, crafting was not
until Abyss. Abyss made the game, for me, it massively legitimized the PoE 2 experience, because prior to that, it was just kind of a bit comical in its iteration. Like, it just lacked any sort of weight when it comes to what are the most... I mean, the game, again, Path of Exile, created by Grinding Gear Games, the games in which you grind for gear, and if gear is not one of the key factors of a loot-based ARPG, you've messed up. And until Abyss, it was like not there at all. So
it was Exile, really YOLO Slam, and that was unless you were like a billionaire in the game and you had access to the insane ritual elements and stuff like that. But
for sure,
it's funny, as soon as we got the crafting that we got from just specifically one league mechanic, it changed everything, in my opinion. It made it like, I don't know, 80% better. There's now
easily
when we're coming to crafting, it's like, how do we fine tune that process with the existing base system that we have from Abyss and Ritual and Expedition and stuff? But
it's a whole conversation that we're just to briefly touch on, that we're going through in our own game and talking about, myself and Sir Gog, who you've had on this podcast, as we build out our game's itemization. It's a question you have to answer fundamentally, which is, do you want the best gear to be gotten from the ground, or do you want it to be crafted from scratch? And that's a big question that answered PoE 2. And like coming in an Abyss, you could basically, without much difficulty, deterministically make an item's 5 out of 6 pretty much perfect with what you wanted. So is that the intention? Yes. Then that means the ground loot is really just for providing access and bases to then work on your crafting of items. So if that's the ideology, that's fine. You just have to be consistent with it. And every layer and system on top of that has to augment and bolster that system in some way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like, is the content that you're doing in the game going to give you the ability to continue to do that in terms of materials, or just like raw drops? And yeah, you can see it. You know, I'm going to be playing Diablo 2 again after this podcast, and they've kind of done the complete opposite. Obviously, back in the day, it was just all about getting the best items from off the ground, right? And so it can work. It can work either way. But yeah,
it's like PoE 1 is the total opposite, where it's the only purpose of an item dropping is if it happened to drop with 30% quality, because no other portion of dropping matters. Everything else you're doing deterministically through sheer, like, you're just grabbing your mom's PayPal card and RMT into high hell. Like, you're spending 400 million mirrors, and you could make anything perfect from scratch.
Yeah.
Right? So that process, if you want that to be the end line of a trade experience, you can have the people who do spend the thousands of divines making something. Then you have to understand that you're going to be then hiding 90% of drops in your game, you know, if not more. So if you want that to be the case, then you could design it that way. And that's not a problem. It's just a total ideology path that you can't differ from, because one will outweigh the other. If you say, oh, we're going to try to add more value to ground items, well, is it going to be more value than me crafting it from scratch eventually? No, then I'm going to do this thing, because this thing gets me to perfection and your way doesn't, you know? So like, the cream always rises to the top, kind of, when it comes to how you design these loot systems.
Absolutely. I feel like in 0.4, like in Path of Exile's current state, there's this 70% like deterministic crafting system we have now, where it's like you can craft up to like 4 mods, like basically every single time. But those last two, somebody in my chat was said you have to get like Bob Ross, get brave and make bold strokes on that item and hope for some happy accidents. And I like that, because at the end of the day, it doesn't completely trivialize drops. Like, I think that there are certain situations, like I've even had this league, I think more so than any other league in the past, where I've picked up items that were like 5 out of 6 mods, like almost perfect off of the ground multiple times. And I was like, this feels amazing. This feels like how I used to feel when I played Diablo 2. And I also can now craft this and make it even more perfect, or, you know, find the perfect base and work on that as well. So,
and to that point, it's also a lot easier now than it'll probably ever be in PoE 2, because the mod pool is quite small.
Right.
To where, for a lot of items, and this actually happened in PoE 1, where they removed resistance modifiers from weapons, when you exalt something that is already 2 out of 3 prefixes, what you're going to hit for roll, disregarding tier, is not a large pool. It's very, very, very small, actually. So when you exalt something that's like a crossbow and it already has like whatever subsection of modifiers looking for, there's only like 3 outcomes. Like, there's not, it's just a matter of hitting a higher tier one. But it's, you know, as another thing, to not even talking about adding mechanics, but if they were to add more mods to the pool and diluting the pool, it's going to massively change your experience, how you approach gearing in general, because it makes ground loot, when you dilute the pool, ground loot also gets worse, right? Because the odds of finding something that's palatable and workable becomes a lot harder. And it even gets more complicated when you start talking about in PoE 2's system for weapon modifiers that are skills tied to the weapons, because those are, I don't think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's only drop, like if I get a reaping staff, right, and unless it's dropping 20, there's no way of making that a 20. Like, that is it. So there's no currencies to improve that scenario.
Those are an
I'm not
issue,
sure,
man. I hate that shit right now. It's so annoying.
So that's where, like, you could easily like, if they added whatever league they add next, you know, Fairyland League, okay. Yeah, Fairy League. There you go.
Okay.
They add that, you know, they add that to the game, and they make a currency that's a premium, an advanced or a high tier currency that is maybe akin to a divine drop in rarity, that says increase the base item skill level by 1 up to the natural cap of dropping, or maybe 1, even 1 under if you want to retain drops, right? So it can only increase it to a 19 versus a 20 or something.
You don't even need this though, because they have skill gems in the freaking game. Like, if you find a level 20 skill gem, why couldn't you just use it on your item? I don't understand why you couldn't do that. Like,
that's a great question.
Level 20
There's
skill
no
gems
great
are
answer.
they're so rare already. It's like, if you find one,
I know.
you're like, Oh, sure.
Unfortunately, like this is where I would say what you've just described is the public opinion and path of least resistance.
Yeah.
The odds of GGG following that is quite low.
Yeah.
Because they typically over-engineer solutions. It's just the same way that everyone always says, why wouldn't you just identify the bottom 10% of skills and give them minor numerical increases every league? It's you could akin it to a Band-Aid fix, but it's a fact that something that is not good that gets numerically better it bridges the gap of it becoming good, right? So the people who are enjoying it will continue to enjoy it at a higher level, but at least now it's in the conversation. Like if nobody's using a certain bow skill because the numbers just say this is a worse thing, right? Because PoE, if you boil it down to, is nothing but numbers. The amount of gear you have, your skill tree, your ascendancies, the gems, all of it equals basically one number eventually. Is how much damage am I doing? What's its uptime is an argument, but how much damage am I doing? Whatever yields the best result there will, if it's a huge gap between what is good and what you enjoy, a lot of people go with what is good because it's going to let you encounter more content and play the game at a higher level. So bridging that gap is quite important. It doesn't have to be 5% balance. Like you're looking at if the best skill is 50% better than the worst skill, that's better than most games already. But right now there's like huge discrepancies behind that. So I think bridging the gap between that is like an obvious choice, but typically isn't the one that's made, unfortunately.
I know it feels like sometimes, and for whatever reason, the skills just keep getting worse. Like I don't know if you are familiar with my boys out there who love concoctions and PoE too. Like every patch, it's like, what? Yeah. You guys nerf concoctions again? Like they're already dead. Like why do you keep doing this to Hex Blast? Come on, bro.
Could it be getting nerfed because other systems are getting nerfed that tangentially drag it down? Possibly, but if that, like an example would be in PoE 1, concoctions derived from damages from life flasks. I'm not sure if it's the same in PoE 2.
Yeah.
But it's derived from life flasks. If they nerf life flasks, concoctions have now to get worse, right? So that would be, obviously they would rectify it by bringing the base damage up to where it's the same or better. But sometimes they just don't, and there's just no explanation for why that happens.
Yeah.
So things like it's, without question, things will get hit as a consequence of other changes.
Of course.
But the ball is in their court always to make sure that all the skills in the game are at least usable and fun, which I feel like should be the most important things. It's a video game. If it's not fun, you fucked up, full stop, right? So it's like, if that's not a priority, and it's like, there's I always find it kind of goofy that like because every time there's like a big live streamer, like whether it's ExileCon or like a big podcast thing with one of the people who work for the game, whether it be Jonathan or Mark or whoever, and you can pull transcripts from them discussing their game for 2 hours. And the fact that the word fun doesn't come up once is a bit strange, like just in general when talking about a video game. I've always found that kind of goofy where it's like, this is the entire point of this, right? Is we're supposed to be having a good time, and like not once have you talked about, is this enjoyable for the player? Like, it's kind of a strange thing.
That's crazy. I haven't actually keyed in on that, but my ears are going to be like dialed in for that next time. Like for when the 0.5, even like maybe for 3.28 when they do the developer chat, I'm gonna be like, fun counter, guys. Do we hear it? How many times are we hearing it?
It'd be very low. Like, so you'll see them say things like, we feel like this was balanced better, or we thought that this thing looked cool, but like, very rarely will they talk about does this feel fun? We tested internally and they said they were having fun. Like, that's just not a really high priority issue, seemingly.
Yeah. I think that fun also, as much as I want to believe that it's universal, is very subjective too. Like,
for sure.
As a developer, if you're just going around claiming that every decision you made is for the sake of fun, it doesn't necessarily like give any merit to what you're saying.
You won't make any progress. No.
Yeah,
if it's the only thing you're ever thinking about, you'll be working in circles. But it absolutely needs to be in the conversation.
Yeah.
And it's like, I imagine a scenario where if you were involving QA testing to a new patch or a new mechanic in PoE2, one of the things on your Google Sheets should be, did you enjoy this experience? And if so, how? Because without asking that question is like, if you're just saying, was this better than this? Did this look better than this? Did this have more damage? It's like, yeah, I mean, that's all relevant, but you're kind of missing a key component here,
For sure.
It's as important as something like SFX. Like, everyone is always very quick to say how amazing the music is in PoE, because it is, and it's a very important thing, but there's a lot of like key components that make up this recipe for this delicious cake, and fun is definitely one of them, just like VFX or SFX.
Of course, yeah. I think that like generally speaking, like you are going to have fun in the game because of the like improvements that it's made in terms of visuals,
For sure.
animation, music, like all of those things. Like if you just played through the campaign and had no prior experience with anything and are just like not
Mhm.
paying attention super critically to all of the patch notes and
Correct.
all of that shit, and you just play the game. I think that
That's a lot
those
of people. Well, that's most people probably. I
yeah,
mean,
I think most people would probably say, "Yo, that was a really fun experience." Like
yep,
I enjoyed my time with the game.
amazing. And that's
Yeah.
that person's opinion is as valid as mine when it comes to their thoughts on a patch.
Mhm.
Like that because that's who we're both people who are playing the game. We both have feedback when it comes to our experience. So if you say I couldn't really get into it because I didn't understand what was happening, well, we've now identified that that's where you have like the low approachability and it's like
Yes.
hard to get into it. Like
Yeah.
that's an important part. In the same way that if I say, yeah, I just held spacebar through the dialogue. Well, is it because it wasn't good, or is it because like I've never been invested to begin? It's like a lot of questions that come from these things.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, totally. No, that's a very interesting point about just like fun. As that's like been the guiding light for myself with regards to all video games. Like if I'm not
Hmm.
having fun, I'm not gonna play it. And it's taken me on this journey that's actually helped me end up in ARPGs specifically.
For sure.
Which is it's been a great place to be in. Personally, I'm moving away from competitive games the last
Well,
like year or two. Yeah.
funny you mention that because I mean, how many friends do you have that have played things like any any shooter games and League of Legends, and you ask them if they're having a good time, and 9 times out of 10 they say this was the fucking worst hour of my life, but then they keep coming back. So
Yeah.
it's like there's like you said, there's so many ways to interpret that dopamine cycle.
Absolutely.
Some
Well,
some some are more healthy than others.
yeah, totally. Like I will say that with regards to the games where people complain a lot about them, it's usually
Yeah.
about the lows feel really low and the highs
Yep.
feel really high. And I think that that can be attributed to like PoE as well, especially with RNG. Like,
For sure.
fucking get bad RNG for a couple days and the game just feels like complete dog shit. And then
Bummer, man.
as soon as you
Yeah.
craft that next amazing item, it's like, oh, like this is the
I'm
best game
back up.
ever. Yeah.
We're back on top, baby.
We're so
Yeah.
back.
Put it all in red.
Yeah.
Let's go.
No, those elements definitely come into play as well.
For
Before
sure.
we get more into the PoEs 2 stuff, which I know we could, or ARPG chats and whatnot, I know we could just talk about
Mhm.
this endlessly. I do want to get some Lighty Lore, if you're cool with that. Just something that I like to do
Sure.
for myself and for
I
the viewers.
very unfortunately saw that you left a comment on a 12 or 13-year-old video of me. And that was like, I was about to fucking jump off a bridge. When I
That
saw
was
that.
me doing the research phase this morning.
Oh,
Saw
good.
some absolute gold on your channel. So speaking
Yeah.
of that, so your oldest videos are from 11 years ago. I think I commented on one that was like 11
Yep.
years old. Young lady in the flesh playing some PoE 1. So
Still old, but young. Yes.
an old soul.
Younger. Yeah.
So yeah, just like walk me through like basically what about Path of Exile made you want to like put yourself on the internet talking about a video game?
Oh, it's 'cause I hate myself. It's the only explanation. No, it's so that's actually was my second YouTube channel. I had one from when YouTube was formed, back when Twitch was Justin TV, back
Okay.
the old website.
Yeah.
But initially it's I've always recorded footage for posterity. It's gonna sound more selfish than not, but I've only ever done things for myself in the video space. It's like I did this because I wanted to watch it back with my friends, and then people watch, and then they ask questions, and I just answer the questions. So it's like, how did you get that thing? How is your build doing this? It's like, well, this is how I did it. And then in terms of PoE, as I was playing, it was the same scenario. And I started writing stuff on back when we used the PoE forums, I would write up, this is the build I was playing, and people would show interest and ask questions, and I would amend it. And I got pretty okay with documentation. And for the first 6-7 years of PoE, I had the most viewed written guide in all of the forums, which was just me doing Cyclone, and that was like had millions compared to the other people's things, just by virtue of answering questions that, to the best of my ability, half the time I was probably wrong when I was talking about stuff, but in a game like PoE, it's very much like tortoise versus the hare. It's if you just play more and you play SSF, you naturally, I feel like you play more. You'll just outpace people in progress and in knowledge. So that's where it really came full circle. I just play more than you, so I got farther than you, and I could tell you about how I did that. That's as base level as I can give you. You know.
Okay. So 11 years ago, you started doing some, YouTube stuff, a lot of guides and whatnot. And then, yeah, they definitely popped off. I was looking at some of your older videos, watching some of them back.
Sure.
A lot of them are over like the 100K like view mark. As of lately, you kind of had a shift in like sort of like just the general content that's on your channel. I know that we're going to talk about sort of what you've been up to more recently later on in this conversation. I just wanted to get your general thoughts about like how are you feeling right now about like making YouTube videos versus like how you felt like back in the day.
Well, I guess the main transition came when I like probably 7-8 years ago. So pre-COVID was working full time, and then I got more involved in doing like challenge based series. So I started with doing the Rags to Riches series, which was in trade PoE, where I just started I made a fresh account and then just showed the progress of how I would interact. This is like before trading websites and async and all that jazz, and it was like this is a trade I made, this is why I did it, I found this market slice that I'm gonna abuse now, I did this thing, and then I climbed up to having multiple mirrors and currency over the course of 2 weeks, and I was like, all right, well that's that, on to the next thing. And then I started the All for One series, which is probably what I'm most well known for. And that's solo self-found unique completion, just collecting all the uniques because they released a tab and it seemed like a cool idea. And that took over most of my content for 5-6 years. Where you get the whole March 11th, 2019 intro where I talk about the unique tab. And that was the main thing. So I just really became long form content. So it swapped off of guides to long form content because I just enjoy the idea of working towards something. And me personally, I'm quite a patient and methodical person when it comes to my goals. So I can have, I'll do this thing that'll take me 10 years. And it's like, I have no problem working towards that. Or, I see things in maybe stints of a month versus a day. And again, it comes back to if I have the time, I could do it and then I could make it happen because like it's hard to emulate that sort of progression in a time span. And I know it's also very enjoyable to watch a month's progress in 30 minutes. So that became the main through line. And then over the past 4 to 6 months, I've been working on game development, which is why I haven't been doing much content in general until this upcoming week. Where I'll be streaming for the PoE stuff, but
let's go
back to work. Yeah,
very cool.
Then back to real work. Yeah,
back to work.
Back to work.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing your journey over such a long period of time. As somebody who's very new to the content creation game and to like playing PoE in general, like, I just admire hearing that because it sounds like you stuck to your guns for a while with the guide stuff. Like you were obviously doing quite well with that, but then over time you're kind of just like, I'm just enjoying the challenge stuff way more. And you kind of just made the swap to that. And I think that I can definitely relate to that. I love doing challenge stuff on PoE as well. And there is like this certain level of investment from the community that you have where they're really keen on like seeing out how this particular journey goes. Like,
Sure.
Like when you achieved, I'm assuming I didn't see the whole result, but like I'm assuming you achieved every single unique item like an SSF.
Nope, still ongoing.
Oh, okay.
I'm at 99%.
Oh my god! So I'm invested on this, dude. Like
the bottom, like the last 10 or 15 are you could start an account with those and it'd be faster.
Yeah.
Like than going the other way around. It's but to your point though. When I say like the selfish answer is I've only ever done whatever the fuck I want, and I think in general most people who get invested are invested in you more so than specifically what you're doing. As long as if it's in remotely the same vein, it's like if you want to do path interviews and you enjoy that comes across on the video the most, and they're gonna receive that, that energy of like you giving a shit more. If you want to transition to challenge based stuff and say, I think I'm good on interviews for the next like year, I'm going to focus on this, your enthusiasm will come across more in that same way.
Right.
Nothing is worse than watching somebody like chase the fucking dragon of something that they don't care about. And if they didn't care about it, I would just say stop doing it because you're fooling nobody in the long run, and if you're not having fun, what's the point to a degree?
True. Yeah, no, I hear you. And it's something that people can just tell. Like it's,
Yo, absolutely.
I would definitely not be at almost episode 40, guys. Holy, if I didn't
I
love
know.
to do this.
Yep.
But yeah, man, no, that's cool. It's cool to hear that you're sort of, and I think that exactly translates into the game development stuff, which we can
Mhm.
get into. I feel like maybe because we're kind of alluring to this, and we're almost at like an hour. So, okay, so the Dark West, something that actually introduced us. So we actually wouldn't be sitting down talking to each other right now,
True.
probably if it wasn't for this game. So for anybody who doesn't know, what the heck is the Dark West, man?
The Dark West is a Western occult action RPG in the kind of same familial vein as like a Diablo 2 or like a Path of Exile that we're releasing in an amount of time that I can't say specifically. But we have a trailer out on that was released on our YouTube and an IGN that kind of blew up in a pretty big way. But I came on the project through the game director, Kevin, who reached out to me. And then I ended up through just doing work so much on it, so it's just to a point where I've just been leading production and then development on it, and we have a really passionate amount of indie team working on this project, and we have a lot of veteran ARPG players and really cool guys like yourself who are assisting with some of the design and quality of assurance to make sure that we make it a really, really cool product. But it's just like and it's going to be a really sick upcoming ARPG we're releasing in early access that I think is going to fill a vacuum in the ARPG space, because for lack of a better term, they're kind of all just set in like high fantasy or dark fantasy. And the idea that even just the theme of it being Western, I think, is something that we could really, as an American, you could really attach to, especially because we see all these, movies and books and all these things talking about that time period. And it is it's a very attractive kind of identifiable one. So the Clint Eastwoods and the all those kind of things. So it's gonna be cool.
Yeah,
Got
absolutely.
some cool stuff cooking.
No, it's very cool. It's also like kind of crazy how many like powerful ARPG minds are kind of working on it behind the scenes. You know what I mean? Like I think that is something that I think it absolutely has going for it. Like there are just so many people that are like very, very familiar with ARPGs, their systems, coming from a whole variety of different types of games and like a lot of thousands of hours put together. I don't even, dude, it'd be crazy if we
hundreds of thousands of hours. Yeah,
if we tallied up the amount of hours that everyone has in like just PoE, probably be like in the hundreds.
Oh, we're over 100,000 easily. Yeah, I mean that's without question. I mean, myself and Sir Gog are easily at 50 in total, without question.
Yeah.
So when we're developing like system mechanics and item implementation and the skill trees and all that sort of stuff, it's coming from a place of absolute gross amount of knowledge and exposure, and it's not just identifying what has been done, but always doing improvements upon it. So it's like, oh, this is how we traditionally do it. Is there a better version of this? Is there one that like ticks more boxes? Is there one that also ties into the world building and thematics of what we want our game to be? And then there is just some things you identify, like I said, as best practice. Like we're not having a wisdom scroll because why? We're having the game pause because a lot of these things, like having a glossary where it's just it's kind of inexcusable for certain games to release at this time and not have these things. No wells because why? Anytime there's like especially a quality of life thing where it's like a 95%, if we were to vote and it'd be like 95% in one direction, it's like, got it, that is the best practice. Like, please, the antiquation does not make you unique, in a game space, especially ARPGs.
For sure. Like it has a very much like a game built by the community of like
by gamers for gamers. Yeah.
I know, as like cliche as that sounds,
so cringe to me always.
It actually is that though, which like is resulting in some really good like not only cook sessions but like decisions about the game as well. Like I think that like I know as cheesy as it sounds, it's like that's how
super high fidelity, super high quality. We have a lot, between people like yourself, or we have Wooly, Seer, Safarian, Try. There's like, I'm sure I'm missing people, but like an endless list of people that are getting their mitts in the mix, especially just from acting as filters and soundboards. It's like very little shit is going to trickle through the level of filters we have built up to where it's going to release in an EA that is like a totally complete and vetted product, you know?
Yeah,
It's the best way to put it.
for sure. No, it's been very cool. It's my like first time ever being part of a project like this, doing any sort
Yeah.
of game development or anything like that. And it just felt like sort of it didn't feel like a huge jump. I guess because I think
Because it
working,
isn't, you know?
yeah, working with you guys, like
Yeah.
it made it feel very comfortable and very like I don't know, just you do a lot more than I do, to be clear with
Well,
everybody
I
who's
do it more
listening.
than anybody, but
Yes.
that's not the point.
You're
Well,
like
a big part of my job is alleviating the friction when it comes to extracting your good ideas and your feedback and applying it to a game space. There's no shortage. We could pull anybody from your chat that has a large amount of time spent playing video games, and they have really unique insights that could be applicable to a variety of games. The issue is, how do we have the conversation and open up to a point where we can get that information out of you and then apply it and then build something around it that makes sense? Like, that's the part that's hard. What really has been the biggest surprise to me with this project is really how depressed it makes me when it comes to looking at other ARPGs where there's so many things that are really, really easy to do that would be
Right.
massive quality of life fixes that they simply don't.
Mhm.
And that's been like the biggest bummer. And it's like, you know, we joke about quality of life. I know that Neversink just said, if you're familiar with him, said
Of
recently
course,
that
yeah.
like there was a thing talking about how gamers want so much quality of life, they're just not, the game's going to play themselves. But it's not. It's just a matter of like removing the points of friction that are basically not improvable by skill, luck, or intention. Like,
Right.
there's no need to have things like when you hit escape, the game not pause. When going to the well, having the scrolls, like these are, you could just push T to teleport. We don't need a portal scroll. So it's like there's ways to express things in a better way that gets the same intention of what that initial design is, but just do it better. And PoE2 is a good example of where they had a lot of these friction points and they've walked them back between like the weird amount of portals you had, or like the idea of like not having certain currencies that are just like this doesn't function without these currencies.
Yeah.
Why did you do this? And then they walk and they're like, oh, everyone likes it now. What do you know? We learned this 15 years ago. Like, you know, so there's a lot of things like that.
And that's the thing, right? Like, we can only come up with so many ideas, as much as we want to think that, like, you know, amongst all of these, like, very, you know, powerful ARPG minds, that nothing's going to slip through the cracks. Of course, things are going to slip through the cracks.
Things do.
And of course, things are going to be not enjoyed by the players. And that's another big part of why I think this project is so great, is because, you know, from the game director down, everybody's been like very much on board with like, if the community fucking hates something, like, then we have to change the way that it is.
Yeah. And again, there's ways to change it that is still in line with the mission statement and within the world you're doing. So an example of this I'll give, which is, say you using a portal scroll in Path of Exile is instant. If you use the portal gem, it's infinite, but it has a cast time. Okay. So couldn't you just devise that in a way that we've removed the scroll, but add instant function to the portal gem, and then certain situations add a cast time? That's what we're doing. So an example of that is, if you try to portal within 10 meters of an enemy, it has a small cast time akin to using the portal gem. If no one's around you, it's instant. So it's like there's ways to implement the same feel of it, but not having the friction of having to fiddle with scrolls. Because again, what is the benefit of having that? It's like you could serve both purposes in a lot of ways. So for wisdom scrolls, the idea is, oh, we want to make it, if the base idea is making it so things drop and you can't filter search them, but also the joy of like the kind of, we get to identify, and that's like the gamble fun moment. Well, why don't you just set it to right click identify? Right? Couldn't that just work? Wouldn't that be the same? And it's like, yes. So we could just do that. Like, there's just no need for certain friction points that are just kind of like not beneficial to the player experience. And then for some reason, if everyone was like, we love these scrolls, yeah, we'll go backwards on this. But I just don't think that's the case for most of these decisions.
Most people just haven't seen a world where you can just right click on something and always identify it.
I'm myself included, but I've never met a subsection of players more than ARPG players that have like beaten dog syndrome, where we'll just take anything. Like, we'll just take all the shit, because there really has been 20 years of very little ingenuity. Like, something to think about in general is like Path of Exile as a game, in both game arcs, like PoE 1 and 2, over the past 15 years, 90% of the ingenuity in systems came in the first 7 years.
Hmm.
After that, there's very little was like as mind blowing as the introduction of the filters or the skill tree or the atlas tree or the mat. Like it just wasn't to the same level, because it's really hard. It's like all the good ideas were blown then, and then coming off of it's like iterations of existing things. But it's like really hard when you're too close to the project. It's hard to make some of these things. So that's where other games like Last Epic coming in, or Torchlight Infinite, or even the Diablos or whomever. You can even say things like No Rest for the Wicked, which I put way more in a Souls category than I do in ARPG category. But there's some systems in that are ideas that are just fresh. And
Absolutely.
it's definitely good to look at these and think, oh, could that work in our game? How would it work? How would we implement it? What do the iterations look like? And it's just, you got to shop around, because sometimes I just feel like it's like a chef who works at a restaurant for 20 years and hasn't eaten out. He's just making the same food he's been making, and it's like,
dude,
well,
that's the
because
same metaphor I've been using the entire time about playing like ARPGs, just to understand like what's good and what's not.
You got to taste around.
You got to eat out, man. You got to go to different places. And
talk about a clippable moment right there.
Yeah, you can. But yeah, dude, it's felt like for me now that's more true than ever. It almost feels like
For sure.
I'm incentivized to go out and play more ARPGs as like homework, which is like the best homework ever. Like going to
that point.
Yeah,
one of our guys we just got in the project at least a week ago. His name is Seer. People might know him. He has a quite large YouTube channel. He makes it his mission statement to play every single ARPG that has ever existed.
Yep.
He's maybe reach out to him, and just if you want to talk about a person on a podcast,
I would love to.
But
I've seen his stuff. His stuff is great.
He's quite a character.
Yeah.
That's like the ultimate expression of it. That maybe that comes full circle where it becomes hard to be beneficial, because you've now tasted everything and nothing's satisfying. But
yes, true.
Yeah, it's like you got to dabble a little bit, especially. So, like, I want to ask you,
sure.
What has been your experience playing Diablo 2? Coming from, did you play a lot of D2 originally, or is this like your main exposure to it coming off of like PoE 2 and stuff?
Yeah, so I started playing Diablo 2 in 2001. I was still in like elementary school. It was very much so akin to that like era that we talked about earlier in the podcast, where like I was playing StarCraft a lot. I was playing like the original Diablo 2 before Lord of Destruction. Then I remember going to buy Lord of Destruction at like a Best Buy when it came out in like 2001. So yeah, I've been playing that basically on and off for like for the last 20 plus years. Yeah, and I've been a huge fan of ARPGs since playing that game. It's been my favorite genre. Like Diablo 2 has basically been my favorite game ever since I've played it in elementary school. And there was never a game for me that felt as good to play and kind of had this sense of like wonder and exploration and everything that Diablo 2 encompassed until PoE 2 for me. That's just kind of where I'm at right now. Not to say that I never tried ARPGs. Like I really try to support like the games I can when they come out and they look interesting. Like even when Last Epoch like dropped into early access like 5-6 years ago, I remember buying it just out of like appreciation for like the story of the development team, like being a bunch of like Redditors who were just like, let's make a new ARPG. Let's make a new ARPG together. And like this was before it had multiplayer and all that shit. And like it was terrible. Like it was so bad when it came out. But
I remember I got my key from Carve when we were working on doing stuff on it. It was definitely a different game now.
100%. And I will say now I think Last Epoch has like some of the best system design for certain things. Like I really like the Circle of Fortune as an SSF gamer. Like I think that it's so cool that they have That's sort of an incentive to make you play SSF and you give you more loot. Like who would have thought that would be a thing to put into a game like that? And like the crafting is great in that game too. But yeah, sorry, I'm getting sort of off track here. But
apology accepted. We'll try not to mention this in your review of this podcast when you get your report card.
Yeah, but yeah, I've been an ARPG gamer for a long time. And yeah, I'm excited to finally. I haven't like played a Diablo 2 ladder reset in like years, so it's been very excited to have it sort of be something to look forward to today. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
it's a good one. My the same friend who got me my CD key for PoE way back, like when it is in the earliest iterations of it, he would go to Best Buy and steal the CD keys from the Diablo. I'm not sure what the statute of limitation is on that, but I remember him with a box cutter ripping CD keys out and with his older brother. That's it's the darker times.
That's where all those CD keys came from. When you go to CD key generator and they just pop up.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, so
I'll give names and addresses. Yeah, that's fine. We'll get them locked up.
Going back to the Dark West for a little bit longer. So
sure.
Essentially, we talked about sort of like your involvement with it. I would love to hear sort of like just initial first thoughts about the project, like when you were approached about it. How did you feel about it, and what like sort of drew you into the project?
So really simply is that I identified quite early on that this was going to, I was one of the first people that were looking at the actual design of the game. And when I was first brought on, it was like incredibly bare bones to where some of the initial things were just blockouts, like grayscale. And when I was contacted by Kevin, the game director, as just because he was a fan of my mind when it came to ARPGs, and similarly why he was a fan of Sir Gog, and when I'm friends with Sir Gog, so I brought him on like a month or so ago in a similar way. But I identified really early on that I was like, I know that if I get involved in this project and bring people I know along, this is going to be like early PoE levels of huge and super, super good. I've always prided myself on being able to identify winners in the field that we're going to excel, and that was a good example of one where I thought this is going to be fucking massive if we could bring this, to the public and make it the iteration I'm envisioning. So immediately after I play, I said, okay, I'm now gonna be involved to the highest extent, and just like we're gonna do everything from scratch. When it came to like the system designs, and we're still like reiterating on things that were created, just chicken scratch from 8 months ago. So it's like once we saw that, and then we started to work on things, it became this idea of, I hope this game comes out to, okay, now I'm all in 90 hours a week, and we're starting to bring in other like really brilliant minds in this field that when it comes to like how we think about systems, mechanic, and designs. And then it's, okay, this is actually shaping up. We're starting to get things going. And then it's like, oh, okay, we got the trailer going, and now it's like the train is full stop. And it's kind of goofy because now we get people, not that like it's you'll get like people who are just like, oh, you're a real product now, I'd like to be involved. Like the people who weren't there from the, whatever. And it's great to see those guys as well. It's just a different thing. But like the train has already left the station to a degree. But those are the great, it's really cool to see those guys get involved also. Like I was talking to like Zizarin on when he was streaming RuneScape last week, and he was like, "Send me a demo," and I'm like, "We don't got one yet, but we'll have one soon." So it's like getting those guys involved too. Like, oh, the larger public are showing interest, but it did take a little bit to get to that point, and now it's like I have no doubt. Like we're going to be making this as good as possible over the next couple years. The EA launch in X amount of months, and then just working on bring it to full, and then also the fact we're launching with an endgame system and a few varieties of them is like one of the things I think PoE 2 missed out on was not having that. That was like a big taboo in my opinion, So trying to avoid that kind of trap.
Yeah,
but it's been an interesting project. Yeah, it's coming along nicely.
That's super cool, man. I think that for me, like when Kevin approached me, it was never from a point of like, I want you to work on this. It was just like, I want to just share what I'm doing because I think that this is such a cool project. And Kevin, for me, has been a day one supporter of my stream and my YouTube content. And it's kind of funny because there's not a lot of people who've been around since day one. And I always thank all the people who have been there from the beginning. But
the OGs, Patreon OGs.
Dude, very early on, he was just like down to like chat about games and whatever. And it was pretty cool. Yeah.
That's when, not to talk about too much in case he's listening, and he'll remind me that I can't believe how cute you were speaking about me. It's like it comes from the most sincere place that this game's creation is a love letter to Diablo 2 set in a dark occult Western setting. He's only just the utmost fan of the games and genres that he's enjoyed, like the biggest Diablo 2 fanboy, right? So we're doing things in the spirit of that, and it only comes from a sincere place. Like we're privately funded by him. We're an indie studio. This is our first big title. Hopefully, more to come out of this in this sort of way. We're a team of 15 to 20 people that are just and that number changes, but it's we're only the most dedicated and passionate when it comes to this project. So there's no Gabe and Fat Cat on a boat with their $40 million champagne who's like, make me a game, peasants, and okay, yeah. Sure. Yeah. We're all definitely very involved, through and through.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so in your opinion, I think we talked about a few of these things with regards to the quality of life stuff and making changes to just the general format of ARPGs to some respect. What are some of the things that you're really excited about that are bringing unique things to the table with regards to the Dark West specifically? If you're allowed to, or if you're able to talk about a few things without giving too much away.
I mean, no one knows more about the game than me, so I would be able to talk about everything, but I'm not going to say everything. So what I will say, the main thing that I'm enjoying, I think that is there's never been an ARPG, a really successful one, that I think has nailed loot to where you don't need a loot filter, and which is one of our larger mission statements is returning to power ground loot, and the idea that when you find something, it's incredibly potent, and also that anything dropping should be picked up. In the same way that if you have a loot filter in PoE, if it's showing, you should be looting it. And that's not even to say that 90% of the shit's not even showing, it's all hidden. I think that objectively a loot filter is kind of a failure in design. And I think that we're trying to crack that code, because it is strange. It's one of those things where you say it out loud, why are we dropping and hiding 95% of loot? There's no one can give me a great explanation for it. It's well, we need these systems because of how rarity. Yeah, but we've already explored that in PoE. We know about smart rolling drops. We know that you can, instead of dropping 10 amulets, you could drop one that has rolled 10 times to give a similar average effect. There's just, to me, it's an inexcusable sin to a degree. So tackling that, I think, is a big one. And the second thing is just the idea of expressing what an ARPG looks like without strict melee, especially on launch. Is because melee has been done the biggest disservice in ARPGs, to where how many iterations of melee just end up looking like screen-wide clear that isn't remotely melee? The vast majority of them end up in that position because it's well, what do I not like about being in melee? I don't want to be in melee range, but I want to play melee. So it's what does that even mean? It's I'm playing in PoE1, you have Lightning Strike and Reeve, well, you're clearing off-screen. So it's are you really melee? I mean, kind of. Slam builds have basically screen-wide clear in both. I mean, so it's just, what would look like melee in our game? How do we represent that through things like shotguns with very small lifespan for projectiles that fall off at a certain distance? So you can emulate the feel of melee, but not kid yourself that, well, again, you're just trying not to be in melee range to begin with. So that's returning to form that kind of tight-knit, defense through hyper-offense ideology of what would be D2 style melee initially. So there's a few different things that I'm pretty excited about, I would say.
Yeah, one of the things that got me really excited was when we started talking about the card system, the poker hand system. I just thought that was just such a wonderful, unique aspect to the game that was fitting. Yep. It fits very well within the lore, the environment.
An easy win, as I was call it.
As somebody who loves poker too, it was just yes. And there's going to be an ability to actually play poker within the game, obviously, as well. And so. Yeah, really, really interesting system.
Yeah, it's it's one of those things where when you talk about the setting, Western America, 1870, you could think of any amount of movies that would fit. Untouchables, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Tombstone, whatever movie you think in your Bone Tomahawk, the ones you think in your mind, it just floods with just the different iconography, the setting, the smell, the taste, how people looked. It's so easy to just have all those boxes ticked. Where it's oh, I know they're going to have a saloon. There's going to be houses look like this. There's going to be there's going to be stagecoach. There's going to be railroads. You already know. So there's so many easy expectations for us to express classic ARPG mechanics and make them wins. So having one of our mechanics be a train that you're on, having it so we're going to be involved in the mines, because blast mining post Civil War, that was when dynamite was prevalent, railroads, like it's all just, it kind of starts writing itself to a degree, right? So it's just, and then tying in, how do we, like, we can't just have, this isn't gonna be like Arma 3 where you're like looking at how much water you have. Like, how do we make it, explain some things? Oh, cool, we make it a cult. Now we can explain why our characters respawn. Now we can explain why we have infinite ammunition, because you don't want to be like picking up bullets would suck. Like, so it's like things like, there's a bunch of little boxes you could keep ticking for how do we explain away certain things. And then you start tying in the lore, and then it just, again, like I said, it writes itself basically.
And that's like how you know you're in a good flow with the game, right? So in terms of like development, so I'm guessing that you didn't have a crap ton of video game development experience under your belt. Did you have any before taking on this particular role?
So, video game development specifically, aside from projects I've worked on when it comes to assisting with quality assurance stuff, no. But I have a lot of very high-end corporate management experience from previous jobs. I can't speak to to certain things, but like working in shortage reduction for high retail companies involved with district attorneys and all this other stuff, and law enforcement. So it's like I've had a lot of experience managing teams, dealing in professional settings, and again, that where it lends itself to the ability to communicate and to understand means running production for a company becomes quite easy, because I then identify things that get lost in translation. We try to bridge those gaps, identify what are you offering, what assets and talents you bring to the table, how can we best utilize that. So it all kind of comes together. And then all the video game stuff is like, that's the easy part, because again, if you've played games for 20 years and you know how to express yourself and converse and interact with others in a pleasant manner, it just makes that translation so easy to be like, this is what I want. I'm really good at organizing my notes and my skills. This is exactly what I need. Here's everything you'd ever want in a checklist. Like that, it just that all becomes quite easy.
Yeah, it seems like you were it's almost like a natural progression for you with like given your previous employment history, and also like not only being a gamer for the last 20 years, but playing Path of Exile for the last like 12 years. Like there is a specific like brain, I guess, that is developed through like the spreadsheets and the like calculations and like all of of the things that Path of Exile offers.
If you could put things into pivot tables in Excel, if you could convey your thoughts and write them down, if you could, do all that, and then also have the loosest knowledge of how to apply those things for a game and what might be good, and from a design perspective, it all comes together so easy, because a large portion of interacting with the SFX team, programmers, animators, people who are doing rigging, VFX, art team directions, it's like you tell them, oh, I want to train. Well, that's not good enough. Like, you have to write, here's 50 examples cited. Here's the dimensions of the train. This is what it looks like in Unreal. This is the measurements. These are the scope. These are example documents. This is locomotion, how we want it. Like, so all that sort of stuff to be presented in such a way that they have no questions. When I hand off something and they say, wow, I've never been handed this information in such a palatable way. This is so easy for me to digest. It's like, okay, I've done my job,
I love that. Okay, so another question I had, just as I pick your brain more about the development of the Dark West Star, and you've sort of talked about the philosophy behind a lot of the decision-making process that you and many other people have when it comes to the design of systems and mechanics. But like, what are some of the things that are the most important to you that you're considering when helping like make these decisions? Essentially, what are some of like your guiding star, your North Star for decision making?
Sure. So it's
waiting for the word fun to come up.
Fun, definitely fun. I mean, we always ask ourselves, would this be enjoyable? So, for example, when we're creating a character class, okay, that is derived from 8 active skills, a few passives, and the equivalent of talents or ascendancies. When we're designing something like that, and you went through this process with me when we were working on one of the classes that we haven't talked about yet, but it's the idea that, do we feel like these things synergize well? Do they come together? Can we see ourselves playing a build and utilizing this? If you can't ever say, I don't see myself using a chain hook, so let's not add it. Does it lend itself to this character? Does it make sense? Am I going to do this? Do you going to do this? It's like, none of us are wanting to do this. Why are we adding it? Like, do these things synergize together? Do you start thinking about items? The more pieces you have, the easier it is, because it's like bowling with the gutter lanes up. I mean, it's really easy to hit amount of pins when those are up, right? It's hard to totally strike out. So when you have actually more rules and somewhat of a more confined design space, it's a lot easier to think of things. So if we know we're going to have roughly, like, we want there to be like 3 or 4 types of builds per class, we say, oh, well, we could see them using this sort of weapon in this way. Does that make sense? Does this skill work for these sort of things? And then we translate that, you know? So as far as like a guiding star, it's just the intention, saying things out loud, like saying it out loud. You know, like, is there, of all the bow skills in PoE 2, do all of them feel like you could see yourselves using them in a build with all the existing uniques in synergistically with each other? Do they all serve a purpose? Is one of them just a redundant lesser version than another? We should probably remove that one then, unless it does something unique. Like, you just have to go through these sort of things. When, like, the actual blueprint is looking at every ARPG and thinking what they did right, what they did wrong, maybe areas we can improve upon. So one of the things that we thought about was, when designing the different biomes for the campaign progression, one of the things we didn't want is like a victory lap thing. So we don't want to go from normal to cruel, because I just don't feel like that serves any purpose that's positive, aside from just being a stopgap because you didn't want to keep making zones. Like, I don't know anybody who's like, my favorite part about doing Act 1 was the second time, because it was, aside from the fact that I was just stronger. Well, you're obviously numerically stronger, but like, do you feel like this made sense? Like, is there an explanation for this? It's like, you have something in PoE 2 where it's just like, or in both PoEs where it's like, we've got time travel now, kind of, you know? It's like, I feel like it's kind of lazy to a degree. So it's just, I'd rather have, there's a reason we have 10 acts in PoE versus Act 1 and 2 4 times, which was how it used to be. It used to be 4 different difficulties, and it's like, okay, we've gone through the dry lake again. We get it. You know, it's we don't need to go through the ledge a 4th time. So we there's just some of those kind of guiding principles of knowing this works, this doesn't work, this makes sense. So the same way that having an endgame mechanic, like, we wanted to add 2 variations, one to represent system mechanics, like what would be in PoE, maybe like an abyss or an expedition, something you encounter while leveling, but also that could scale quite well into the end game. And then we wanted a secondary mechanic that was just infinitely going down to a degree, right? Because we want to add the ideas of, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we had leaderboards, we had races, we had milestones, these sort of things. So it's just hitting those sort of beats that make sense from design. Kind of comes naturally when you think about the space, you think about what other games have done, what parts we enjoy. Like, isn't it fun for, this might not be a PoE 2 thing, but in PoE 1, there was a guy named Shit-Stain Steve who it does delve and only goes down, and it's like, isn't it cool to, like, it just becomes like a community cheerleader thing where it's like, yeah, go Steve, go. It's like, wouldn't it be cool if we had that? Like, we could have that.
Yes.
Not that that matters for 99% of things, but like, we want to have this space open that could exist, that we could have a leaderboard, that we can have the idea of that. We want to do things like, when I was talking to Sir Gog about having the pause menu active for just in-game, he said, well, yeah, but make sure we add a minute millisecond delay within a range. And I was like, why do we need that? It's like, oh, that way you can't do sequence breaks if you were speedrunning, since the game's set and offline. And it's like, it's not something I wouldn't inherently think about, but it makes sense that maybe there was like something where you could do a sequence break for an enemy ability that you can't do because the pausing isn't the exact same time now. So it's like, just the forethought of thinking about these things in the future, having it so there's an expression for movement skills to be used quite frequently. So people who are doing speedrunning, or one of the things, I don't know if you were in this conversation, we talked about having it so when you pause the game in your character select in your inventory screen, that's a toggleable function that you could toggle off, because a lot of people like to move when looking at their character screen, because if they're going quickly, they want to be like, let me pop a new thing on, remove a thing, switch a thing. So you could have it both ways. It's just a matter of, like, I don't want to like say lazy development, but there's no reason you can't have it both ways. For a lot of these things, you just have it be a toggle in your in your settings menu. So we're just thinking with the forethought of like, oh, these are different people that want to express their game in a certain way. We can just cater to everybody if you just do it right and think about it, you know?
Yeah, it's cool. It almost is like a culmination of experience and the things that you enjoy and the things that you don't
Sure.
like, and you're like,
Yeah.
as we go through, the years playing these types of games, there's a lot of things that build up that are like annoying parts of various games that you play through,
Yep.
and you're like, this cannot exist in like this project. And when you have enough people with enough of those experiences, it comes together in like a lot of like really like nice decision making. Like as you mentioned,
Yep.
a lot of those things are going into the game that just feel good, man. Like I'm excited about this project,
Oh.
dude. Yeah, it's very, very cool.
Yeah. And to me, it's just like an unforgettable sin to not consider these things, especially given how ridiculously easy they are to implement. That's the most frustrating. Like when I said I was just like the depression of the whole thing, but like these are not difficult to add to the game, especially when like the technology's been there for 15, 20 years for a lot of them. If you have a pause as an option in your game, we had this in PoE 1 where there was whenever Shaper Elder was initially released in mapping, Shaper would pause the game and they would at the end of each map. And they'd be like, "Oh, so we could pause the game." And then 6 years later we have pausing. It's like, what the like what why wasn't this in the game earlier? And in the same way that like, oh, we have pausing, so shouldn't we have different options for what pauses where if we wanted to use that? But I don't think there's anything more than like it's just such a low priority that it just
Yeah.
never gets addressed. But to me, if everything becomes a low priority because it's just representing a small subsection of your player's interest, you're just going to eventually disrespect everybody in some way. Like you have to address all these things. And keep putting it to the back burner is not the answer. Like if we keep offending 2% of the player base because we're not prioritizing these small little things of quality of life that are really easy to like implement, well, eventually that's going to make half of the player base, if you keep doing that. So I think like, especially in a game like PoE that's so big, there needs to be like, we've always joked that like, I wish you would just take 3 months off and fix every problem in your game because you really could to a degree. There's a lot of things that are really easy to clean up that would go a really, really long way. It's just a shame that that's just not a priority.
Yeah. I feel like with pause specifically, it's just one of those things that now that it's almost become like an industry standard with regards to like
Mhm.
ARPGs and whatnot, it feels really weird to go back and play any game that doesn't have that. Like
Sure.
I did last Epoch, I think before 0.3 came out in PoE 2, and I like
Yeah.
to play on hardcore. And it just was like I can't even interact with chat anymore. Like I have to just be like
Yeah.
one track mind playing this game. And like that's just, like a very specific situation. Like, for people who like need to just get up and do things, it's like these are kind of like no-brainers that just have to exist in games now. I think like the same
Yeah.
thing can be said about WASD too. Like as much as like I'm not somebody
Yeah.
who has to play with WASD for like specifically ARPGs, like it is very nice. And going back to a game for me isn't a big issue to go back to click to move. Like I think a lot of people kind of draw the line now at being like, if it doesn't have this, I'm just not interested. Like I think if PoE 1 wanted to attract a massive influx of new players, they would just be like, banger league mechanic, WASD is a feature, and
Yeah.
it would just see an overflow of people come to play the game, and they're
I
sitting on
would
that golden egg,
there's
right?
for sure. And well, that's a whole other painful conversation is how many quality of life features have been just in the chamber waiting for like a
Yeah.
negative community feedback for them to be like, "Oh, but here's this." Like that's like a
Yeah.
tinfoil hat kind of thing that I feel like is probably real. Like I'm on team tinfoil there. I guarantee there's
Yeah.
things that they're sandbagging changes that they're waiting until somebody fucks up something and then being like, "Here's this." Um, but in this, you could honestly like, especially baseline functions such as like async trade, the currency exchange and PoE. Like these are things that you would lose a third of your player base if not half, if you cut those right now. And like these are non-negotiables. I would say to at this point to a game that is trade based, especially because that's
Yeah.
what the game's balanced around is trade. So yeah, it's just there's no route forward for those sort of things. I mean, the WASD movement's one of them. I don't particularly enjoy it. I'm more of a mouse and keyboard person, but to me, it's like there's no excuse. Which is actually one of the biggest things that why PoE 2 existed was because they didn't want to backport WSD to a degree because with having WSD be your main movement set it actually totally changes the balance of combat to a degree. So because it changes how spells work, then things are channeled in such a way, and it's like a kind of a ground up redesign for how combat's treated. So I get why it's like they're hesitant about doing it, but like that ship is so sailed at this point that they have to do it.
Definitely. Okay, so I wanted to ask you, as we kind of move back into more of like a Path of Exile based discussion. So obviously, everybody knows that ExileCon announced for November of this year. It'll be the third ExileCon. We've been talking about ExileCon quite a bit, actually, with regards to like things that were said in both of the previous ones. I just wanted to ask you, like, did you go to any previous ExileCon events, and do you have any plans on attending this one as well?
No. So I've never been to I haven't been to either of the Exile cons because they're in the dark side of the world. They're like in a different dimension. I'm just not paying $5,000 to walk around for 2 days. Sorry. I've been to Grinding Gear Games conventions before, when it used to be that we would meet at a bar, and I went to one of those in San Francisco where like meeting Chris and the team and stuff. But that was like, there was 30 of us and it was a very different vibe. So that was, I would do that again because at least we could, interact with people. But it's just, I'm not interested in the convention thing, I don't think, because I would just, again, most of the things they say on stage, I have to take with like a huge grain of salt because there's been a really not, a very trackable and not positive history from my POV of things that are being promised and then under-delivered. They've just got like, they're just, this happens when a company gets like, they're worth like hundreds of millions of dollars. They're backed by $1 trillion companies. It's just, they're too big for me to trust most things at this point.
Yeah.
I think there's too much money involved.
For sure. And the company has changed quite a bit over the last like 6-7 years or whatever, like ever since they've done their first ExileCon. For me, like, and I completely understand what you're saying. Like, if I was to go to New Zealand, it would definitely not be for 2 days. Like, it would be, whenever you travel like that amount of distance, for me, it would basically be like going as far away from where I am as possible. And I'm still going to go. I think it's because I'm able to actually live like a childhood like dream that I always wanted to go to BlizzCon when I was like very into Blizzard games, and I was always like A, young, and B, broke. And so as much as I wanted to go, I don't know about you, dude, but like when I was a kid, like BlizzCon just felt like it was like the epicenter of
oh sure, I'd watch it on pay-per-view. I mean, I'd steal it on pay-per-view, but I would watch it.
Right. And so
the costume contest, all that sort of cool stuff.
Yeah, dude. And it just felt like during those times too, like the announcements were just so exciting because you just wanted to kind of just get on the forefront of what Blizzard was cooking up next, right?
It was the pulse of the company.
Yeah, and so now I feel like I'm at a point in my life where like I don't care about Blizzard really at all, but I have this other company that I really care about. I'm really passionate about, and I'm also old enough to travel by myself because I'm an adult now and not a child. And
you're a big boy.
I'm a big boy, and I have money now, so I can do things. I can spend irresponsibly if I want to. So that's kind of it. I've convinced myself and my partner to go. She's her birthday is like the following week, so it's actually perfect, bro. I'm like, I'm like, honey, we're going there we're going to New Zealand for your birthday.
I absolutely get it.
We have to go to this convention just a week before, though. But this is about you. You know what I mean?
Sure. It really boils down to like, as a fucking homeowner, I would rather spend $5,000 on my house. It's like that's the most based real answer. Is like I got a wife, I got a dog. I just rather be at home and like I'd rather redo my bathroom for $5 than go to ExileCon. 100%. I'll watch a video. I'm sure it'll be fun. I would have fun. I'd meet a lot of people that I've been friends with for 10, 15 years, but I could redo my bathroom, or I can get a new boiler. Like that to me is priorities. That's the adult dad answer. Unfortunately, it's just
of course. No, I get that.
Rather do that.
Yeah.
No, but I get it.
Yeah.
If there was one in New York, I'd be there.
I was just gonna say, like, oh, man. If they do the
problem is it's so expensive. So I go to I'm a lot of good friends with a lot of people who are very prominent in the trading card scenes.
Yeah.
So I go to like Collecticons and like Comic Cons and those sort of convention things. That's like a totally different vibe. But I go to that, but I just know that those things you cannot host shit in New York. It's way too expensive. So they're hosted in Jersey, and it's like, then I'll go to New Jersey to go to a thing that's 2 hours away or whatever. But even in Canada, I'd go to Canada. But yeah,
it'd be a lot cheaper to do it in Canada.
Not to the goddamn Shire. I'm not flying to the Shire to go to ExileCon. Like,
yeah, I think it's having the Lord of the Rings be also a big part of the reason why people go to New Zealand also helps them out entirely. Like if they didn't have that thing to be like, oh, and you can also go to Hobbiton, it'd be like, well, like now there's
because I would.
Oh, of course. We're 100% I'm gonna go check that out too. But I think for me, I think it comes down to like my priorities are, I guess, a little bit different from yours. I don't own a house. Because houses are expensive. And so I have a little bit more freedom with the money that I do have, I guess.
I'll tell you what, I would rather go to ExileCon than watch the newest season of Rings of Power. I'll give you that.
Oh God,
that's about as far as I'll get.
That's a
I'd
good
rather
answer.
do that. Yeah, right. Just the other thing I think is that aside from Mark, there's no one I would want to really talk to in company because they're all gone that I care about. Like I've seen the 10 people I've interacted with in grinding gear games are gone now. So it's like I'm not going to see the guys who were making the initial uniques. I'm not going to be able to talk. There's no Bex, there's no Chris. It's like I just wouldn't care as much. I think in that way. I'm too old, and to miss my. Thankfully, I've had a chance to speak to all these people, and I still talk to a lot of them to this day, even. But it's just if I'd see Mark is my shining light in company. I would say that'd be fun to see and talk to.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anybody that I would want to have on the podcast, and I mean, there's a lot of people that always say like, oh, like Jonathan Rogers needs to be a guest on one of your podcasts, and I always say I would love to have that interview, but I've always been really fascinated with the story of Mark as well. And as somebody who specifically like focuses in my like interviews as like the journey, the story, how did you get here and sort of like what, events happened in order for you to get there. Like, I think like Mark's story is actually quite fascinating, like starting, I believe in like QA, like however many years ago and sort of like working his way through and becoming like an invaluable member of the company. Like it's just such an interesting story. So yeah, I would love to have him on the podcast as well. That'd be excellent.
Well, you should get the future Mark. You should get Octavian on if you haven't had that happen.
No, that would be excellent as well. Yeah.
That's a good example of somebody who's coming from the outside in, has a great head on his shoulder when it comes to understanding the gamescape and development and design, and is one of those guys I think I would say universally loved, but like it's just no one. I've never met a hater, an Octavian hater in that way. And I've talked to him a few times.
Yeah,
he's just a solid dude that just has a good handling on the game space. So he'd be a cool guy to talk to for sure.
Yeah, I think everything will sort of happen in its own time. Like I do think that I need to like actually start like going Andy Dufresne and being like, I'm gonna send one letter every week until they respond, and maybe it'll take me
show up at their houses. Yeah.
Maybe it'll take 7 years for them to send me like $500 for my prison library, but I'll get it eventually. You know what I mean? So yeah, everything in good time.
As we much like him, you could also crawl through a river of shit to get freedom.
Isn't that just life, brother? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so as we sort of close up this PoE section of the podcast, before we move on to sort of the lighthearted closing stuff, just generally speaking, like I know we kind of allured to maybe your lack of optimism towards PoE1, but like, are you optimistic for like the development of both of the games right now, or are you like kind of slightly worried that like one is going to absolutely take a hit?
I'm not optimistic towards what would be content for myself. I think that chapter is probably just closed. I think that for my engagement with the game, what I would enjoy about the game, I think those best years are just kind of behind because I don't think the amount of attention is going to be given to PoE, has been or will be given to PoE1 ever again. Not even close to what it was. You could definitely just quantify this as amount of releases, quality of releases. There's like just numbers you could look at to support this claim. But just from feel and intention, more things fall through the cracks, less things are implemented, less things are balanced. I just think that probably chapter of my engagement with the game is behind, but I'm still going to be playing both versions of the game going forward. I think that within probably 3 years, you'll get PoE 2 1.0. And I think that within a year of that, they'll probably announce the shutdown of PoE 1 as a byproduct. Because I don't see a future, I don't see a point in having both games going forward, especially if the vast majority of resources and tension goes into PoE 2. I think that that's just going to become the default better product with time. The main thing it's lacking is refinement, polish, and content. As one game winds down, the other one will blossom, you could say. And you're not going to get everyone who played PoE1 to hop on the PoE2 train, but it's going to be massively offset by the influx of players that already exist, because the ARPG game space is one that is oversaturated with similarity, and there's a lot of vacancies in variety, I think, in that space, which is why we're making something like the Dark West, for example, because we think that there's how many high fantasy ARPGs that are copy pasted in most of their ideology do you need? Like, I think there's definitely, we can get some. I'm surprised there's no like really, really great kind of like cyberpunky ARPG. Like, there's a lot of like genres that just don't.
Dude, there's that Path of Furries game that's coming out soon.
Oh God, that's put them down.
No, I hear what you mean. No,
coming off of like cyberpunk, I just there's like we could definitely make there should 100%. Be like a mecha robot one, because it's like same with looter shooters has been just like a cursed genre for so long.
Yeah,
I think ARPGs are basically was nothing for the past 15 years, and now we're starting to get like a lot of them pop up, which is great. Competition breeds quality to a degree, but it's just like there's so many demographics in that game space, like genres geographically or thematically, that just are not represented that well. So
I think a cyberpunk or like sci-fi futuristic ARPG would go super hard, especially if done well. Yeah. Like chopping up enemies instead of cycloning with a laser sword instead of.
And you could explain away anything when you have alien technology. Like it could be all bullshit. I mean, it could be fully AI gen story. Like, it doesn't matter. You could just be like, oh yeah, we respond because of nanites. Yeah. We shoot because of these aliens that did this thing. It's like, all right, cool.
Yeah, you have a good basis for any sort of thing that you want to pull off. It doesn't have to be grounded at all.
Somehow we always end in high fantasy. I don't know how it happened.
So you said actually something interesting in your sort of response about like the optimism for one or for both games, and it was that you think that 1.0 for PoE 2 is coming out in the next like 3 years. And I wanted to ask like what your basis for that conclusion was, because a lot of people think that the 1.0 release actually is going to be this year, dude. What do you think?
Well, if it happens, I think it'll be a shit show, because I just don't see how they're remotely ready. If it happens early to what would be a complete product, I assume it would just be pressure from up top, from the owner of their company, which is the owner. They're like a double subsidiary from Tencent. There's a company that owns GGG, and they're owned by Tencent. I assume if there's pressure for release, it's going to be coming from the top down. But I think if it would take at least 2 years to do it right, just at the pace of like 0.1 to 0.2 to 0.3 to 0.4, because these have not been fast between them. And it's also like there's been so many balance things that have, it's like, it's not as if PoE 1 where we get 2 weeks of balance and it's 3 months of dormancy. It's like we're getting balance changes and bug fixes even as of yesterday or whatever, 2 weeks ago. So it's like there's so many things are broken that need to be fixed, that the more things you add, the more things will get broken. It's like they're just not remotely close to done. That I think that doing it early would be wild, and it would be probably poorly received, but that'd be the GGG special to a degree. If it comes out half cooked, it'd be on brand, so I don't know.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's like you have to ask yourself, like, why are they doing ExileCon this year? Like, I think that all signs point to 1.0. And, there's been some breakdowns on the internet of like the timelines for this stuff. I think Dreamcore's got a fantastic video he just put out about, 2 potential solutions to how this is going to play out. And
0.5 is what I imagine, like a huge 0.5 with maybe like most of the classes I could see.
Yeah, because they've been pretty transparent with the fact that like all the classes don't need to be in 1.0. And so if you think about it, like
That's crazy to me.
What they need in 1.0, from what they've said, is that they need Acts 5 and 6, which could be very far along right now, and they need to probably have a couple more classes in the game. That's it. Like, as in terms of like content for the game, like when you break it down like that, like we're not that far away.
That I could see. Yeah. However, I think this is a big problem with what the company has been doing, is they're compromising on quality to release things on an arbitrary schedule. To say that 1.0 is a completed version of your product, so not releasing it with all your classes is wacky to me. Like, or not releasing it with the base intention of this is a completed game. Like, it being live service is not the same as you releasing something undercooked or underdelivered. Those are two different things. Live service means this product is basically, this is how perfect it is in this iteration. This is what we intended to do. That is what our 1.0 is, right? And then everything on top of that is additions down the road that'll have to fit into our game. But it's having it release in a way where you don't have all your classes, at least, that would be implying that that wasn't the intention to begin with, which I don't think is the case. I think that's a compromise that they've probably made to reach a schedule that no one's requesting. People who enjoy PoE 2 are enjoying it. They don't give a shit that it's called 1.0 or 0.4, you know? So, like, to just arbitrarily release at this point would be for who? I think no one but they're just investors. Like, that would be the only thing in my mind.
100%.
You could poll, I think, 1,000 PoE 2 players and said, would you rather this release complete, or would you rather this release 6 months ahead of, or a year ahead of schedule, when it wouldn't be any different on how we're releasing content? Like, it's going to be a no-brainer to me. So strange, but you know.
Yeah, and it's funny because, you know, the game was supposed to be in early access for 1 year. That was like the pitched like early access length.
That was a cuckoo crazy dream. There was no way.
And we believed it, brother. We believed it.
I did not.
I believed it.
I said 4 years. That was my initial thing.
But once we started seeing like the actual content that every patch contained, and what how much more work each patch resulted in terms of, as you mentioned, balancing and figuring out how to solve the issues that those patches started, we started becoming more like, wait a minute, if this takes this long, this is not going to be a year's worth of development time to get to 1.0. But yeah, man, like, I think at the end of the day, like, I'm trying to figure out what else could they be saying out in ExileCon. Like, I don't think they're dropping Path of Exile mobile. Like, I don't know, dude. Yeah, it feels like they're going to announce 1.0.
ExileCon is it being released just a year after the previous ExileCon? Like, what's the date thing? Like, comparison?
Sorry, say again?
Like, is ExileCon just every 2 years, like on a certain date range?
No, so there hasn't been very many of them. So the first one was 2019, the second was 2023. So that is a 4-year difference.
4-year gap,
and now we're looking at another 3-year difference. So it just seems like they kind of do them when they have shit to say.
It could just be that they were told to do one. That's I think it's more likely that you're going to get a large 0.5 with a large chunk of content, then they're probably going to announce, you know, a new launcher called GGG Store or something, and then you're going to get like something, you know. I don't think it's going to be 1.0, and if it is, I cannot imagine it's like a flawless launch. That because anything less than a completed game without issues after what would be 7 years of working on the game now is, like, to me, just again over-promising and under-delivering. So
yeah, I mean, looking at like PoE 1's development, and they're obviously like two very different games, but like, to my knowledge, like 1.0 of PoE 1 wasn't even the full campaign. It was like whatever it was, like a couple acts. Also,
it was shit. Just to be clear, like, it wasn't good. PoE 1 was so bad, where we had so many catastrophic issues that it was not remotely a good game. It was just the best flavor of shit we had at the time.
Right.
But the difference is now you have tons of competition. There are simply better games that are releasing complete without 3, 4, 5 years of issues. That's the biggest problem that this company has in general, is they're playing the game as if they're the only player still. They're not. Mm-hmm. There's other players at the table. Like, there's a reason you're constantly losing to Diablo. Like, the approachability is dog shit. The reason there's, like, constantly losing launches to even things like, you know, where they're kind of like bullying companies like 11th Hour by launching on the exact same days they're launching on. Like it's not a good look, and it's not you're not the only game anymore. So playing as if so will only be detrimental, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I know what you mean. I think that we're probably going to see 1.0 come out like sooner rather than later. Definitely not within the 3-year mark. And it seems a bit crazy to say right now, especially with like how incomplete the game maybe feels to a lot of people.
Sure.
But yeah, maybe they are just being
Well, it's
pressured from
only
how
incomplete compared to PoE 1. If
100%.
you compare it to any other ARPG, it's basically more content, if not the same. Probably last Epoch is like more content now, but if you compare its 1.0 to what would be this like next launch's PoE 2, PoE 2 has more content, right? So they only have less content compared to their own game,
Yeah.
which is, you know,
Yeah.
they're winning no matter what. They've already sold copies. The biggest thing, and the question I have for you,
Sure.
I know we're maybe going long, but PoE 2 is the to me is the biggest meme. It's a $30 free game, right? It's a game that's free eventually, quote unquote, but it's $30 to play PoE 2. What is their monetization model going to be when they're relying on league to league business when the game is no longer $30? Because they're never going to sell another copy in the future because the game will be free. So relying on supporter packs and stuff. I think hoping to make remotely the same amount of money consistently, or how is that monetization model going to look going forward from a business perspective? Because all their money for this game's development has come from kind of selling a product that's supposed to be free eventually. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
That's a good question. So like normally, I mean, I think grinding your game specifically with regard to the way that they treat monetization in Path of Exile 1 is a system that is very unique to, I think, a few game companies. And it's something that fosters a incredibly passionate an incredibly passionate community, so much so that they love the company and the game so much that they want to voluntarily give them money instead of being
Yep.
forced to give them money. And
Yep.
so it's worked for them in the past with PoE 1. Like people are spending thousands of dollars on MTX,
Sure.
supporter packs, stash tabs for a free game. They've made tons of money. And that's
Yeah.
just from being goated developers and being,
Mhm.
providing and creating a game that people, and it's actually like, you have to give them credit where credit's due. Like, this is the hard way to do it. Like, it's way easier to do it like the battle pass and the pay to win and the pay for convenience shit. Like, when you have to
Yep.
create a product that inspires people to give you money out of them saying, wow, this is great value. Like, I'm gonna pay for this. Like that's way harder as a path for
Yeah.
monetization. So I think they'll do the same thing with PoE 2, man. Like even with
Yeah.
PoE 2, it's like that the purchasing of PoE 2 is in the same vein because for a lot of people, especially PoE 1 veterans like yourself and many others, like giving
Yeah.
them the $30 is like being like, I have appreciated how much value that you've provided for me with this free game that I've been playing for 30,000 hours. And
Well,
therefore,
people like me already have a key because we've already spent way too much money.
yes, yes. But
We've already spent the money,
you
baby.
got the key from money that you spent, right? And so
So it was $480. That was the break point for getting a key. Which, to be fair,
yeah.
that's the prerequisite basically to get all the specialized tabs in
Mhm.
PoE 1.
Yeah.
Which is like kind of you need that to play the game to the fullest extent.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you think they're going to continue with the MTX game free model?
I don't see why they wouldn't. I mean, it's proven successful, extremely successful for them. And I don't know if this is a fact or not, but I think that they've paid all development costs already from just the money they've made from PoE 2. Like
Oh, sure,
game
undoubtedly.
sales only, not even MTX or supporter packs and whatnot.
Yep.
Like so I think they're in the green anyway. Like I don't and here's the thing, man, like this is one of the reasons why I fell so in love with PoE 2 and with grinding your games was
Mhm.
just because of I think the value that you get. Like even though the game is $30, like
Sure.
I can't tell you what other game I've played for 2,000 hours and thought to myself, like this is the best $30 I've ever spent in terms of like value from a game
Oh yeah.
developer to a gamer. Like it's
Mhm.
very rare that you get sort of that amount of time spent with a game for $30.
Yeah.
And it's going to be
And
free like down the road, which is pretty cool.
to that point, even when it first came out, when PoE 2.1 came out,
Yeah.
I was saying at that point in time, if I were to recommend an ARPG to like a layman to the genre, there's no shot I would have been PoE 2. Would have been LE. Would have been like Last Epoch. Would have been the game.
Okay.
In the current iteration of PoE 2, I could absolutely see myself recommending that as like maybe like an A/B choice. Like they're both pretty similar to me, I think now as far as being approachable and content level wise. Where it's like, yeah, I could if you know I won't mock you for buying PoE 2 now because it makes sense to me because the game is so much more polished. Like the initial launch of PoE 2, I had like at a 2 out of 10 or something, and then the current iteration to me is like a 5 out of 10. Like
Okay.
it's way
It's getting up there. Every patch, goes up.
Oh,
by
for sure.
0.1.
Aside from point 2, every patch has been better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Point 2, I feel like was a bit of a regression, but
Yeah.
no, it's definitely markedly better each time. So even if I have the one of the biggest problems I say about PoE 2 is the biggest mistake they ever made was calling it PoE 2, because it's always going to be compared to PoE 1, which I think is better in most every way still. But that's just the thing that gets solved with time and care and balance and polish, which is what it's getting. So in time, it should be back up to a 10 out of 10, eventually, and that'll be the only recommendation I give at that point.
It's crazy that it's going to be the way that I'm looking at it right now is it's going to be a next generation of gamers Diablo 2 is kind of how I'm looking at it. And that's already been the case for a lot of people. It's like
just this is the foundation. Like this is what every game is going to be looking at and being like, yeah, I could do that, or I could play, this is the game I'd rather play.
Like it's funny as somebody who's I don't know how old you are, but I'm assuming we're within the same age, like demographic, kind of within a few years. Like, as somebody like us who's started playing, ARPGs like however many years ago, 20 years ago or something like that. Like, nowadays, like you're gonna get a lot of people, and I've had a lot of people already who've been like, PoE 2 is my first ARPG I've ever played, and I'm like, how fucking
high bar. Yeah.
I'm like, how fucking crazy is that? Like, that's amazing that like you're not comparing this game to every other ARPG that you like, that we've touched since,
nowhere to go but down for them, basically.
Well, unless the game just makes some very terrible decisions, which I'm pretty confident they won't do moving forward.
Hopefully
but,
not. Knock on wood.
We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, as we sort of get into like the last, few minutes, we've kind of been all over the place on this. Also, I want to just say thanks, dude, for coming on. It's been a blast just like chatting with you.
Yeah.
This has been great. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
We can go for hours.
I know. We will do this definitely again at some point for sure. Yeah, just as some like lighthearted closing questions as you as we sort of wind down. I just wanted to ask, as from a community standpoint, you've been doing this for a long time. Have there been any people that have had a like big positive impact on like yourself, your content, like your journey throughout like PoE? Like anybody you want to shout out that's been like a a positive influence?
I don't really know if it answers the question necessarily, but it's the first thing that came to mind for some reason was during the heist live stream.
Okay.
For Path of Exile Heist League, there was so Ziggy D does the Q&A afterwards.
Yep.
For that. And the first thing that came to mind was when the heist live stream was happening. And this kind of sparked a continuous tradition of this, that when they showcased how many uniques were being added to the game because of my unique collection series, I saw Ziggy D type in chat, "Rip Lighty," because I would have to go collect all 100 and whatever. And there was just like a bunch of Rip Lighties. And for some reason, that's the one that came to mind.
Oh, that's special.
So now I think of, and he's like the Boy Scout of the game, right?
Yeah.
So it's, I just think about, that was the first thing that came to mind, was just that whole thing of like every time there's uniques now in the showcase, I see a bunch of Rip Lighties in the PoE chat, even if it's like whatever amount, it's just as a meme. So that was what came to mind. Yeah,
I love that. Yeah, I mean, keeping the man at 99% patch to patch is basically what's going to happen now, because I feel like every league they're adding more unique items and stuff too. So you're like at the threshold to like complete the challenge as soon as you get to that point.
You have to collect them ethically makes it much harder.
100%.
So no using divination cards to obfuscate acquisition makes life much more tricky.
It made me honestly want to try it in PoE 2, and I feel like it's so much more obtainable because there's only like a couple hundred uniques in the game right now.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So
it's also, they're just not that rare. Even the rarest, aside from like the Astromentus debacle, there's like most things there's just like not the same level of T0s in that game, which I think is good, because the bottom 90% of uniques in PoE 1 are just kind of shit, unfortunately. So
Yeah. Yeah. Do you incorporate like are chance orbs part of the challenge, or do you have to like drop them like
sure,
naturally?
if it,
Yeah.
yeah, because chance orbs are only triggered on base game unique. So if you were to chance a Squire, for example, which is a T0, it's like 40-50,000 chance on average, which
Hmm.
first off, up until last patch, you had to manually click chance scour, chance scour. Now there's a button in the crafting thing. You could just scroll your mouse wheel down on it. So, 15 years later, we're still getting trickles of quality of life. But,
Yeah.
yeah, man.
Yeah. No, the way it's sort of to close out, the way that I view Path of Exile 1 is that it's going to go down in history as being a absolute legendary classic game that I don't think will ever be officially dead, because I think that there's always going to be that like niche group of people that prefer the game more or want to play it. The way that I view like Diablo 2, for example, like I think that they're both going to go down in history as being sort of this on the same playing field for people. Where like, to this day, like, you know, looking beyond the most recent D2R update where there's actually new content for the game, like it has been, the servers have been kept on, the lights have been on for the game for
For
the
sure.
entire
Yeah.
time. And that's because there always are people that want to play. Like even myself, like going back and playing a ladder season for whatever reason, just out of nostalgia, right? That being said, like I think the same thing will be done for PoE 2. I don't, or for PoE 1. I don't understand like the doomer perspective where it's like, oh, this game is gonna be like shut down and it's gonna be dead and like all this shit. It's like these are the only two games that this company has. Like they're not doing anything else. They're making PoE, like PoE 1 and PoE 2. And like I don't think that like it would do them any favors to just like shut down on a game, even if
Yeah.
PoE 2 gets to a point where it's just almost better in every way, which I think it'll take a very long time to get to. Like it's just there's always going to be people that want to play, man. So as long as there's that, people will play it.
I think they're gonna just do ultimately what is, I think, the best financially. So as long as there's still people giving money towards the PoE1 cause, it'll stay up.
Of course.
If it goes under, I just hope that they hope to put the code online so we can get like offline versions or something. But
Yeah.
I mean, I like you said, it's gonna be hard pressed for me to maybe personally prefer PoE2 ever. Although I think it's definitely going to be if it isn't soon going to be the superior, like objective superior product, because it's just it's got a 15-year head start technology wise also to a degree. So, but it will be like the blueprint for years and years to come. And regarding them only making the two games, aside from mobile, I've been joking that I think, well, now that Chris Wilson's gone, maybe less, but I've been joking I think they've been making a secret card game for like 5 years, but I'm still going to put my tinfoil hat on for that one, that they're making some card game on the side or something. So,
dude, maybe
We'll see if
we're
I'm right.
getting baited by ExileCon and everyone thinks that it's going to be PoE 2 1.0 and it's
Just
going to be
reskinned Hearthstone. Yeah, that's what it's going to be.
That would be
Quote
insane,
me on it,
dude.
yeah.
Lighty said it. I'm going to be at ExileCon like FaceTime. You'd be like, I can't believe
Yeah.
this. Right.
Fucking
Lighty,
card game, bro. You called it. I was like, yeah,
Lighty
man.
was right. All right, man. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, dude. Thank you so much for coming on
Appreciate
today.
it. Yeah.
Just at this point in time, I know there's some people that said in chat they've never heard of you before, which is preposterous. How dare you? I'm just kidding. Just shout yourself out. Where can we find you? And yeah, like, well, just what are you gonna be working on?
You could look up Lighty on YouTube. I'm the first thing that comes up anywhere. But working on is mostly, I mean, coming next week, I'm gonna be having I'll be live for the reveal probably of the next PoE 1 league, and then I'll have my classic podcast week leading after that. So I'll be doing the +1 podcast with some of my fellow people, like Manny and Leggy, and then I'll have podcasts with Slippery Jim and Yosis probably 2 days afterwards. Then I'm gonna go on. I have Aaron, the action ARPG guy. I'll be in his podcast that Wednesday. That'll be talking Dark West stuff, but that'll be a thing. And then I'll be live for League Launch, and like most likely I'll be live for 40 hours straight in that weekend, and then I'll just crash out and then go back to normal work on Dark West things.
Sounds like you need some degenerate gaming in your life, because you've been degenerately working on the Dark West for the last like few, like however many months. So no,
Yep.
it's gonna be sweet to see you on the live streams, doing the podcast kind of tour, playing some PoE 1. Yeah, guys, as always, I will be leaving links to Lighty's YouTube, Twitch, also to the Dark West as well in the video description. If you're curious, go check him out. You can go back as many years as 11 or 12 years on his YouTube channel, see what he looked like back then. It's a good time. Yeah.
Like it looked like this.
Yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the podcast on the live streams, either on YouTube or Twitch, I appreciate you. If you're watching on the YouTube VOD, I appreciate you as well. And yeah, I have a lot more cool podcasts. I think Angormus is lined up for next week, so keep your eyes peeled for that episode. And until the next time, stay safe, have fun, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. All right, everybody, that wraps it up for this episode of the Passive Tree Podcast. If you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate a like and subscribe for more PoE2 content. I have a bunch more episodes of the podcast lined up with some really great guests, so keep your eyes peeled for that. If you're interested in supporting the podcast and the channel, consider supporting through Patreon. There's a link in the video description. A special shout out to Kevin F. for supporting this channel. I appreciate you. Thank you. And until next time, happy blasting, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.